Mank is a truly impressive film, and in fact, I was so impressed by it while I was watching it that I couldn't help but tweet about how incredible it was before I finished it. And I say that because it turns out to be a very hard film to digest. And while it starts out as a film about Tinseltown, it slowly transitions into a movie about politics. And in that transition, it becomes more meaningful, but also less entertaining. The first third of Mank is for everyone. By the time you get to the end of Mank, a lot of you, I suspect some of you actually will have turned it off, to be honest with you. But hey, that's what some of you say about the greatest of art, right? That it challenges you and disgusts some people, and Mank's definitely up there. But how can you not love a movie where Bill Nye the Science Guy has a brief but brilliant cameo as Upton Sinclair, the Bernie Sanders of the 1930s? I was like, is that Bill Nye? That's genius! By far and away, the most impressive thing about Mank to me is how it recreates classic filmmaking. I am a Turner Classic Movies junkie. It is a shame to me and quite tragic that people do not appreciate classic cinema. And that Hollywood, one of the reasons that, I like the nostalgia kick in bringing back franchises, but I really dislike remaking classic films because the originals are amazing. I wish everyone would watch classic movies. So, and you would, and you think that, you can't do that anymore. You can't capture that Hollywood magic, that classic Hollywood magic. But David Fincher proves that you still very much can. Oh boy! It was just, I was like a kid in a candy shop or like going to Disney World, but as a movie fan. It was that incredible. David Fincher doesn't just recreate classic movie making in terms of directing and cinematography. By the way, I noticed it, he has that mark, for the real change that he highlighted in his own Fight Club. That's here even. And then also the sound quality. It sounds like a classic film in terms of the recording. That's incredible. I mean, it's such attention to detail, but also the acting. I want to call out in particular Lily Collins and Tom Pelphrey, who were able to recreate the diction and physicality of 1930s and 1940s acting. Like, wow, there are points watching Mank, and it's such a cool trick to pull off, that if you didn't know you were looking at a modern day actor, you would swear you actually were watching a classic movie. Isn't that fantastic? The other thing that makes the biggest impression here is how Mank highlights that the more things change, the more they stay the same. There's the Great Depression here, which is affecting the movie business in similar ways to the pandemic today. And then even more importantly, it highlights how Hollywood was mixed up in politics even back in the 1930s. And the conversations, dirty tricks, and smear campaigns used in this movie mirror today so closely, it's shocking. You think we have new problems? We in fact have problems that just simply haven't gone away. And speaking of famous sayings, another one is, if you those who cannot remember the past are doomed to repeat it. And I think Mank really highlights how we know so little of our brief history here in the United States. It's, as I said, incredible. I don't know how fun it is. At a certain point, it becomes less entertaining, but still, it's really, really interesting. Now, to have a sad, angry drunk commenting on all of this, I guess in some ways, that's a stand-in for modern Twitter, right? Although I think Twitter is more clever than the Mank character here. But this is where classic Hollywood did a better job. What Mank really needs is a Mr. Smith instead of a Mr. Mankiewicz. But I think it's also worth pointing out that one of those characters is fictional and one of them is real. But still, I don't know, did Mankiewicz really deliver the drunken third act speech that he does here? Because it's weak and aimless. It lets a lot of the air out of the film. It also allows for a rather strong, stinging, and I have to say, accurate comeback from Charles Dance's Hearst, which suddenly makes you wonder what David Fincher and his father, who wrote the script back in the 1990s, Fincher's father passed away in 2003, but what they're actually trying to say. It suddenly becomes unclear. And it seems, I felt on first viewing, this is definitely a movie you have to watch more than once, but it made me almost feel like they undercut their entire movie in that moment. Now, as I said, Mank will not be for everyone. Who is it for? It's for people who love Hollywood history and political history. I am somebody who loves both those things. But even for me, as I said, I need to watch this film again to understand it. It's just too dense to understand in one viewing. And also, I rewound several times while I was watching it the first time to hear a line again. Also, because the sound quality is very like 1930s and 40s, it's not always great. So sometimes I had trouble understanding a line. But some lines were so brilliant, I rewound them to see them again. Some shots were so brilliant, I wanted to see them again. I mean, it was really incredible. But even with one viewing, as I said, Mank definitely comes across as a cinematic work of art and will likely be the awards frontrunner this year. As we all know, Hollywood loves movies about itself, and the political parallels and commentary are icing on the cake. Although this does highlight how in the 1930s, Hollywood had, a lot of conservatives in Hollywood were actually in positions of power, which is in stark contrast to today. Although not when you consider news divisions, so the commentary is still very poignant and timely. As for the rest of the cast, many of you have asked me about Amanda Seyfried, and she does a very nice job playing perhaps the original Harley Quinn, Marion Davies. If you're familiar with Marion Davies or after you watch this movie, you'll totally get what I'm saying. Arliss Howard is incredible as Louis B. Mayer, apparently the Rupert Murdoch of the 1930s Hollywood. His scenes are fantastic, both from a Hollywood and political perspective. He has one scene which starts out with some amazing commentary about Hollywood and then ends with just an absolutely devastating commentary on how businesses don't care about their employees. I mean, wow. And with Tom Pelphrey in the mix, again, as I said, he does a fantastic job. It's fun to see another Marvel Netflix alum here as well, and that's Toby Leonard Moore, who has a brief cameo as David O. Selznick. I was like, wow, David Fincher, do you watch the Marvel Netflix shows? So anyway, what about Gary Oldman? Well, I have to say, I think he's only okay here. I think part of the reason that Mank doesn't work is because of Gary Oldman. Maybe another actor could have done a better job with that big drunken speech in the third act. I think also the problem is that Mank is not a particularly likable character. Heck, I'd even argue he's unlikable. And I think an actor with a more personal, impish charm would have made the role pop more and made it more believable that he's able to get away with what he does. Oldman also looks nothing like the real Herman Mankiewicz. So I think maybe Philip Seymour Hoffman would have been great casting if he hadn't also tragically passed away. And Fincher, back in the 1990s, when his father first wrote the script, wanted Kevin Spacey for the lead role. And I have to say, before Spacey killed his own career, Spacey actually would have been perfect. So it's a real shame. At least, again, from an acting perspective. But Gary Oldman, he's just not what this movie needs as the focal point. He doesn't ruin it, but I think he does hold it back a little bit. So Mank is a must-watch for film and political junkies. Really. I mean, many times watching the movie, your jaw will literally drop at its visuals. I mean, there's like a New Year's Eve celebration. I think it was a political party. I think it was also New Year's Eve. And I don't recall. Again, it's a very dense movie, and it's told out of order, so it jumps in time a lot. And you're like, where are we? But you're like, I'm enjoying this trip, no matter what's happening. But I mean, the visuals are just stunning, just absolutely stunning. And so is the commentary. So your jaw will drop for visuals and it'll drop for commentary. But for everyone else, I think a lot of people will be left shrugging their shoulders and saying, I didn't like it, when it does take home a bunch of awards. So that's my review of Mank, which has been playing in theaters, but will hit Netflix finally to stream this Friday, December 4th. Share your own thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.